Hello everybody, this is Alice here, aka bubbalubber of the YouTube gaming channel bubbalubberx, and today I'm here to show you to bring you a tutorial series on Load the board game, which stands for League of Ancient Defenders. I'm going to be running you through the rules today and teaching you everything you need to know in order to play this game. So the first things first, I'm going to go over what you can expect to find on the cards. So as an example, I've got one of the hero cards here, which is Chaos King. You'll find in the top left corner here the class of the card. In the case of Chaos King, he is the Guardian class. They tend to be the tanks of your team. Then over here, just to the right of the name, you'll find the health of the character. Tanky characters like the Guardians tend to have more health than, say, for example, an Archer, who Vilitalis has only 8 health. The next thing we can find on a hero card is that hero's signature weapon, which starts at the tier 1 and then can be upgraded to the tier 2 and eventually the tier 3, which will upgrade both the stats of the attack as well as possibly adding an ability to the attack. The next part of the hero card is the equipment slot. Each character can have one item equipped at any one time, and these symbols on it here are what determine the types of items that you can equip. So in the case of our friend Chaos King here, he can equip single-handed melee weapons, he can equip heavy armor, and he can equip shields. Then finally at the bottom is our hero's 3 abilities. These will vary with each hero, of course, and they are split into 2 general types. The ones with this hexagonal box are active skills, and they are used during your hero's turns for the cost of an action, as well as the listed amount of mana crystals. And then there are defensive skills, which are used outside of the hero's turns, usually usually as a result of being attacked, and they have this little shield icon and once again cost the required amount of mana crystals. The next card type we are going to look at is item cards here. Now, as you can see from each of them, in the top left corner is the cost of it in gold coins. So once a hero has enough gold coins to buy that item, they can purchase it from the shop here. And the shop has 9 randomly dealt items from the item deck, and anytime a card is bought, then a new item will replace it from the item stack. The next part of item cards is just below the cost, and it is the type of item it is. So for example, just as these examples, we have a generic item, a light armor, a shield, another generic item, and a single-handed melee weapon. So out of these, the spiked shield and the gunblade are items that could potentially be purchased by Chaos King. Then finally, at the bottom of the card is the effect. Now, with most of these, they are once per turn abilities. There are a few that are passive, which I believe the main one and they are ones that will they're generally, it's obvious which ones, such as the minimum wage, which means that when your character dies, they lose no more than 2 gold. But other than that, they've got their stats that they can be used once per turn. In the case of weapons, such as one-handed melee weapons, their effect takes the form of an attack. For defensive items like shield and armor, these stats here indicate dice you roll and what you need to hit in order to deflect damage. Whereas any other items, it will just say what the effect of the card is. So for example, in the Chalice of Health's case, you would roll 4 dice, and for every 3+, you would remove 1 damage from any allied hero. In addition to that, some items will have these add effects, and some of them will also have, I'm trying to remember the name of it, I'll find it in a sec, but the additional effects is something that the add effect is something that happens in addition. So for example, Spiked Shield rolls 3 dice that hits on a 4+, and additionally adjacent attackers will receive 2 strikes back. And if we go and search through the deck, there it is, Alt, that was it. Some will also have alternate effects. So for example, the Gambler's Gloves will either be able to roll 2 dice that hit on a 4+ in order to prevent damage when attacked, or alternatively, you can re-roll one of your dice when attacking. With effects that are alt, it's either or. With effects that are add, it's in addition to whatever dice roll effect that item might have. And the final card type we are going to look at is the forest deck cards. The forest deck over here is what will determine what sort of nasty creatures and events your heroes will encounter when they go wandering in the forest. And this is the main one you're going to be finding. These are forest creeps. They have a gold value, which is how much they're worth when you kill them. They have a health value, which is how much damage you need to inflict them in order for them to die, and they have any attack stats, as well as sometimes they will have an effect in addition to that, and that's what determines how badly they hit you when you stumble across them. So now that we have a good understanding of what all the cards are and what they do, we can get into learning the basic rules of the game. So here is an example of the phase summary. The game is split into 3 phases per turn, with each phase being split into multiple different parts. So initially is the reinforcement phase, and you start that by refilling your mana pool back to the maximum of 8, or lower if you're part of a team game and you have a more limited mana pool. You also take 1 gold coin and give it to each hero to give them their passive gold gain. And heroes will only gain this passive gold if they are currently alive. If any of your heroes are currently KO'd, then they won't gain any of the passive gold. And the final thing you do is you can buy and spawn lane creeps. So for the first turn, you just get 3 of these regular creeps per lane, and in future turns, which I'll get to in a minute, you do something a little bit more special. But for now, we're just going to give each of these lanes their 3 regular creeps, and we're going to do the same for the Atlantis side. Ba-dum, ba-dum. 6, 7, 8, and 9. So that's the reinforcement phase completed. Then we move on to the aggression phase. Now this is where the game starts to alternate between the Chaos side and the Atlantis side taking actions. So the Chaos side always goes first in these situations. So the first thing you do in this phase is to activate the 3 towers that are on your side of the board. So those are the 3 tower spaces, and each of them has a range of 2. So for example, this bottom tower here could reach as far as here, or here, or here, and any of these 2 spaces closer. So in the case of the first turn, none of the towers on either side are anywhere near close enough to actually hit each other. Next, we get to activate our minions, and they're going to start by moving, and you always start by moving the minions that are closest to the enemy towers. So in the case of these guys, these are all equally as close to the enemy towers, so they'll all be going at pretty much the same time. And when a minion moves, they move as a wave. So for example, these 3 regular minions here are a minion wave, and so these 3 are going to move together, and they can move either 1 or 2 spaces forward. They have to always move 1 space if possible, and they can move up to 2 spaces. So we're just going to move all of these minions forward 2 spaces, and we're going to do the same with the Atlantis side. Then the final part of this phase is having the minions attack each other, starting with, once again, the Chaos side. So these standard minions just roll 1 dice each, so if these ones were to attack, they would roll a total of 3 dice, and they would hit on a 4+. So if we give a little example roll, these 3 would manage to deal 1 damage if they were within range to hit anything. However, for now, all of the minions are out of range, so nothing that needs to be worried about for this turn. So that's the end of the aggression phase, and then it moves on to the hero phase. So starting with the Chaos side, each player gets to activate all of their heroes. So here are my 5 heroes. They are currently off the board. So I can choose any one of these heroes to activate in any order. So as an example, let's activate the hero Yulva, who is a brawler hero, which is a bit of a mix of tankiness and damaginess in a melee hero. And so I choose to activate her. And if a hero is off the board at the start of their activation, either from it being the first turn of the game and they haven't spawned yet, or because that hero has died and is about to respawn, the first thing you do is you pick one of your 3 spawn points in order to place that hero on. And if any of these spawn points have been destroyed, obviously you cannot choose that spawn point to bring on your hero. So for the example, I'm going to start Yulva on this space. So from here, I can then take Yulva's turn, and each hero's activation consists of 2 parts, the movement and the general actions. The movement is moving up to 3 spaces in any direction, so Yulva could go 1, 2, 3 spaces straight forward up the middle lane and end up not in range to really do much there. Or alternatively, I can take her 1 and 2 and she can enter the forest. Now, as soon as a hero enters the forest, they draw a forest card and encounter whatever is on the other side. So let's see. So Yulva has encountered the Empty Road. This is one of the non-creep forest cards. So in the case of the Empty Road, it's basically a nothing happens card. So we just throw that away. And so because Yulva still has 1 more point of movement, she can continue to explore the forest, hopefully find something she can beat up. So let's draw a second forest card. Okay, and here we have the wolf. So this is worth 2 gold if killed, and has a total of 3 health, and will attack for 4 dice that hit on a 4+. So whenever a player draws one of these forest creeps, then it is up to their opponent to roll the attack dice. So in the case, I'll take the Atlantis player's blue dice over here, and I'm going to roll 4 of them for this wolf's attack. So let's see what the wolf gets. Okay, the wolf gets very lucky and gets 4 hits. If we look at Yulva's card, she does have a defensive ability, but it's not one that can really reduce damage, and overall isn't one that's going to be too useful in this situation, so we won't use it. So we just take this 4 damage and place it on Yulva, put it just below so we're not blocking up her card. So now that Yulva's been attacked by the forest creep, she has 2 choices. She can either ignore the forest creep and continue moving, and if she had any movement remaining she could use it, or she can stop and she can try and attack the creature and kill it. In the case of Yulva here, we are going to try and kill it. So let's grab 3 dice, because if we look at her signature weapon, it is the Trusty Blade, which has a range of 1, which is obviously going to hit the wolf that's on the same square as us. It rolls 3 dice, and for every 3+, that is a successful strike that will cause damage. So let's give these dice a roll, and she gets very lucky. She manages to hit the wolf 3 times and kill it straight away. So she's going to gain 2 additional gold for that. And the wolves get discarded. So that was one of the general actions that I mentioned earlier. Each hero gets 2 general actions that they can take, and as soon as they take any general actions, then their movement portion of their turn is finished. So for example, if Yulva had encountered the wolves on this space and had decided to attack them, even though she killed the wolf in one shot, she wouldn't have been able to use the third and final movement of her movement allowance because she stopped and used one of her general actions to deal with it. The general actions that a character can take are to attack with your signature weapon, as I just did with Yulva. You can activate your item, and whether or not an item requires a general action to use is determined by whether or not it has a range on it. So for example, the Gunblade, which has a range because it's an attack, that would cost a general action to use, whereas something like, say, the Healing Urn, oh, wrong button. Whereas, say, the Healing Urn, which is just roll 2 dice, doesn't have a range on it, so that could be used at any point, even outside of the hero's turn. And speaking of Healing Urn, Yulva does indeed have 3 gold, so at any point during a hero's activation, they can spend their gold and they can buy an item. Except she can't actually buy that one, my mistake, because Yulva doesn't have access to the ability to buy generic items, but if she were, then she would have been able to buy the Healing Urn. The other actions, general actions a hero can take are to use one of their abilities. So if I wanted, I could have used an attack like Against All Odds against the wolf, although in Yulva's case that wouldn't have been too useful. And the final general action a character can take is to sprint. And sprinting lets you spend 1 general action to move up to 2 additional spaces. So in Yulva's case, we could use her second general action to do some movement and get her out of the forest and clear a bit of space for other heroes. So now we'll go on to a ranged character. So now that Yulva's done, we'll move on to Velatalis, who will also come into the middle. If we look at Velatalis, she is an archer character with 8 health, so she's a bit less tanky than a bunch of the other characters we've seen. However, she does have ranged attacks, and she does have a lot more significant power than Chaos King or Yulva. So we're going to just move her straight up the middle, and then she can attack with her Hawk's Gauntlet. So that's again 3 dice, and they hit on a 2+. So we give these a roll. So she managed to hit 3 times. Thankfully, it didn't trigger the special ability of her Hawk's Gauntlets, which is to subtract 1 strike for every 1 that she rolled. So, in essence, her Hawk Gauntlet will either hit with all 3, hit with 2, and miss with 1, which will result in 1 hit, or it will miss completely. So, it's a bit of a gamble to use her Hawk Gauntlet. However, in this case, she did kill all 3 of these regular creeps that she was attacking. And so this is another way that characters can gain gold. Whenever a character attacks and kills lane creeps, they gain 1 gold for every 2 minions that they kill as part of 1 attack. So since she killed 3, that gives her 1 additional gold. If she had been able to kill 4 minions, then she could have gotten 2 gold from it. But there's only a few characters that are able to, since a minion wave can contain a maximum of 3 creeps. So with that, that's her turn done. And also, one thing of note is that it has to be as part of 1 attack. So if she had attacked and killed 1, and then attacked with her second action and killed a second minion, then she wouldn't have gotten any gold for it. So we'll just put these other heroes onto the board for now, and won't really worry about them. And we'll spin around here and we'll show what happens when it comes to death. So we'll put the Prophet character, who is a fellow archer. She's a little bit health than Velatalis does. And we'll bring her on here, and as an example, we'll say that Velatalis has already taken 6 damage already. So the Prophet is going to attack with her. We'll say that she attacks with her Blood Pact, so we can show how a skill works at the same time. So first of all, we take the 2 mana crystals, that is the cost of that ability, and we set them to one side. And then we look at the stats from it. It is 2 range, so that's 1 and 2, so definitely in range of Velatalis. And it rolls 4 dice that hit on a 4+. So we gather the dice needed for this attack and give them a roll and see what happens. So there is 3 hits. So at this point, Velatalis would get a chance to use her defensive ability, which in this case is called Missile Defense, which would actually allow her to potentially block the attack. However, for the sake of the demonstration, we won't. So we look at Blood Pact again, so Prophet would be able to remove 1 damage from herself for every strike that she got. So Blood Pact is basically a self-healing ability. But for now, she's on full health, so don't worry about that. So instead, we just worry about her killing Velatalis. So she would deal the remaining 2 damage and knock her out. So when a character is defeated, their stand is removed from the board. Any status effects they might have on them are removed. And they are given one of these revive tokens. And it starts with the 2 crosses face up. Additionally, whoever slayed the opposing hero would be able to gain 3 gold. That is the 3rd way that characters have to gain gold. The final way of gaining gold is to take out the objective spaces. The turrets and the spawn points can be attacked just like anything else, and it's a little bit hard to see on this board, but the turrets have 8 health total and the spawn points have 5, and those are both worth 5 gold when destroyed. So for now, we'll just bring on the rest of the Atlantis heroes, and we finish off the turn there. So if we look at the phase summary, after both players have had a chance to activate all of their heroes, the turn ends and we move on to the next one. And so once again, reinforcement phase to gain mana back. Then every living hero would get their additional gold. And then we do spawning. So on the second turn onwards, each spawn initially will get 2 regular creeps. We'll just move these out of the way to make things a little bit easier. So each of these waves will gain 2 regular creeps. And from there, each player gets to decide what special creeps they want to add to their forces. Each player gets 1 of these special creeps that they can add to a lane for free, and if they want to, they can spend 3 gold from any of their heroes, and all 3 gold has to come from 1 hero, and for each 3 that they spend, they can add an additional special creep to their lineup. However, since a creep wave can only have 3 miniatures in it, then it means that there's a limit of only being able to buy 2 additional special creeps, since you can't fill the waves any more than what there already is in that case. So let's go over what these do. So the first creep is the Protector, and what Protectors do is they are your tanky creeps. They have twice the health of a regular creep, and both hit points have to be removed in 1 attack. So any attack that just causes 1 damage will just bounce off the Protector and not do anything. And in addition, the protectors will always be hit first in the creep wave, so they're there to protect your other creeps, and they are very useful in lanes where you need a bit more durability from your creeps. Next up is the runner, and what runners do is any creep wave that they are a part of will move as far as humanly possible. So let's say, for example, in this lane, these three, when we get to movement, then this first creep wave would get to move up its 2 spaces, and then this creep wave, instead of moving its usual 1 or 2 spaces, would move the full 3 spaces until it came to a stop because of the wave in front of it. And finally is the skirmisher, and the skirmisher, first of all, it's like a reverse protector in that it is always the last thing attacked in a minion wave. Whenever your minion wave is taking damage, you always assign them to the skirmisher last. The second advantage the skirmisher has is that, unlike the others, you actually roll 2 dice when attacking with it. So this wave, as an example, would get to roll 4 dice when attacking. All of these creeps have very different uses and can all be variedly useful in fights, so it's up to players to decide which they want to use. So we'll go over 2 more things, and then that should be a good place to end this tutorial. That is that, and it should cover the basics. So let's move these creeps over here for now. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is targeting. Whenever there's creeps on a field, they will always be attacked first. So for example, anything attacking this space where the Prophet and her 3 regulars are will have to deal 3 damage to take out these regulars before they can start dealing damage to the Prophet herself. However, when there aren't any creeps there, so in the case of this space over here where Drago is, if it's a skill target in the space, such as, for example, if Chaos King wanted to use his Lord of Chaos ability, he would have to target Drago first, so all of his damage would have to go on Drago. However, he could overspill some of his damage onto the tower if, for example, Drago had only 3 health left and Chaos King dealt 4 damage to him. Then the remaining 1 damage would carry over to the next available target. However, if Chaos King were to get up here and use either his signature weapon or an item that was a weapon type, such as the Gunblade, then he could choose whether he wanted to target Drago or whether he wanted to target the Atlantis Tower. An additional note of the targeting requirements is that if there's a tower on its own, an objective on its own, such as a tower or a spawn point, it cannot be targeted with skills at all. So even if Chaos King wanted to use either Corruption or Lord of Chaos to deal damage to this tower, he couldn't. He would have to use his signature weapon attack. And the final thing we are going to talk about today is death. Actually, there's a couple more things I need to note on, sorry. So, as you saw on the hero phase here, after you activate your heroes on a side, you have the remove/flip 1 revive tokens from each slain hero part of the phase. And what that means is that so say I'd activated all of my Chaos heroes, I would then look at my slain heroes. If any of these revive tokens were on the 1 cross side, they would be removed. Or if they're like Vilatalis and they're on the 2 cross side, then they get flipped to the 1 cross side. So essentially, what this lets you see is how long it is until your characters are back in the game. And it's almost always going to be 2 turns that but your hero is unable to activate, since it'll get flipped after one activation of them not being in the game, and then removed after the second. Another thing to note about movement is that while you can move across a space with an allied hero, you cannot end your turn on the same space. Each space on the board can only hold one hero. And additionally, your heroes can never move on to a space occupied by anything enemy controlled unless specifically stated by an effect. So with that, the final thing left to note is these status effects. These status effects can be caused by a variety of things, such as abilities, special weapons, and even forest creeps. And the three status conditions are knockdown, which reduces your character's general actions from 2 down to 1, blindness, which gives a -1 modifier to any dice rolls that character has to take, and finally immobilization, which means that character is unable to take any sort of movement action until it's removed. And all of these status effects are on your hero until they either die or until they finish activating. So for example, if Chaos King had blindness on him, he would move, he would take his actions, and then at the end of his activation he would remove his blindness. And I believe that is just about everything. The only other thing to mention is the victory condition. Depending on the sort of match you're playing, you will be aiming to get a number of victory points, and you get 1 victory point per objective space that you destroy. So the standard is 3, so you would either have to kill all 3 towers or destroy 2 towers and one of the opponent's spawn points. And that's all the rules for the 1v1 version of the game. In the case of playing more than 2 players, then you will have an additional character on each team. And the standard team uses 1 character of each role, so this team here is a standard team that has an archer, a guardian, a striker, an assassin, and a mage. In team games where you're playing with more than 1 player, each team will get an additional mage for a total of 6, and you will either split the characters into 2 groups of 3 for a 2v2 team game, or into 3 groups of 2 for a 3v3 team game. And likewise, the mana pool is split. So in the case of a 2v2 game, each player gets a total of 5 mana between their 3 heroes. And in the case of a 3v3 game, each player gets a total of 4 mana split amongst their 2 heroes. Other than that, the game plays out exactly the same. Instead of all of your heroes activating at once, you take turns. So, for example, in a 3v3 game, the Chaos side would activate one of their players' heroes, activating their 2 heroes. Then one of the Atlantis players would activate their heroes, again activating 2 heroes, and then going back to Chaos to activate one of their players with their 2 heroes, and so on and so forth. And so with that, you have everything you need to know in order to play League of Ancient Defenders. This has been a paid promotional video from Archon Studios. You can go ahead and check out the pledge manager for this game, which at the time of recording has just gone live on their website. I will leave a link below this video. Hopefully this video has given you a good idea of what the gameplay is like, and hopefully it will help those of you who are trying to learn the game. thank you all very much for watching. I've been Alice, aka bubbalubber, and until next time, goodbye.